Last year, the company that practically invented the Indian software career did something it hadn't done in 57 years. TCS laid off 12,000 people. But compared to the 12,000 lost jobs, India added 5.2 million new developers to GitHub, more than any country on Earth. Look at that gap. The industry is expanding, even as the specific mass-produced developer role of the last 30 years begins to vanish. For 70 years, the absolute bottleneck in making software was the physical act of typing the code. Today, that bottleneck is gone. The industry is undergoing a violent restructuring, forcing a total reassessment of what a software job actually entails and the skills required to keep one. Former OpenAI researcher Andrej Karpathy maps this out in 3 stages. First was Software 1.0. For decades, human beings had to manually type every single line of logic in languages like C++, Java, or Python. If you wanted a machine to do something, you wrote the exact instructions yourself. Then came Software 2.0. This arrived with deep learning. Instead of writing the logic, engineers trained neural networks. The program wasn't lines of code anymore. It was the mathematical weights of a model. Human logic was being replaced by systems that learned how to do the job. Now we are entering Software 3.0. The language model is the computer. The prompt is the program, and the hottest programming language in the world is simply English. For 30 years, India's pitch to the global tech market was 5 words: cheap engineers who speak English. Software 3.0 erased the competitive value of cheap engineering, but it turned the second half of that sentence into a superpower. English has evolved into the primary mechanism for constructing complex software architecture, functioning as a high-level programming syntax in its own right. Karpathy coined a term for this new era: vibe coding. Today, a single person can sit down and generate the core logic of a functional, working app in just one afternoon, without ever really reading the code. But that miraculous afternoon of AI generation contains a hidden trap. It only gets the software to 90% completion. The remaining 10% remains a grueling manual process. You will spend a week clicking through dashboards, configuring logins, setting up payments, registering domains, and copying API keys just to make that afternoon's project actually usable. AI has successfully moved the friction of software development away from writing the core logic and dropped it entirely onto the shoulders of deployment and integration. In the autonomous vehicle industry, they have a name for this wall. They call it the March of Nines. This graph maps out the math behind that wall. Getting a demo to work 90% of the time is fast. But earning that next 9, getting to 99% reliability, costs the exact same amount of effort all over again. Moving to 99.9% requires an even larger exponential spike in energy. Self-driving cars gave flawless demos back in 2014, and today they are still painstakingly rolling out city by city. This illusion of speed is highly measurable. A recent randomized trial gave experienced developers AI tools. The developers firmly believed they were working 20% faster. In reality, the clock showed they were actually 19% slower. There is a 39-point gap between the feeling of speed and the actual output. And when we audit that output, we find security vulnerabilities in roughly 60% of all AI-generated code. Large language models have effectively automated the act of typing, which has forced every engineer on Earth into the new role of a reviewer. A reviewer doesn't write. They read what the machine produced. They rely on their taste, their experience, and their battle scars to spot the incredibly subtle ways that these models fail. Markets only pay for solving bottlenecks. Since generating code is practically free now, the financial value has migrated. The money moves to the humans who can verify accuracy and conquer those final 9s. Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella describes most business software as a CRUD database: create, read, update, delete, with business logic on top. When a customer can replicate that entire logic layer in a single afternoon using AI, the value of charging a recurring fee for access to a basic tool evaporates. This transition is treacherous. When the fintech firm Klarna fired its software vendors to replace them with AI agents, quality plummeted and their stock cratered by 50%. They eventually had to rehire humans to fix the damage caused by removing the human in the loop. This proves that the survival of a software company now depends on more than just providing a tool that exists. To stay relevant, you must move from selling software seats to selling verified outcomes, like a closed accounting book or a filed tax return. When raw code ceases to be a competitive advantage, Victory goes entirely to whoever has the brand trust and the distribution to deliver a flawless, finished result. There's an old economic idea called the Jevons paradox. It states that when a resource becomes 10 times cheaper to produce, the world doesn't consume less of it. They actually consume 100 times more. Apply that to India's 60 million small businesses. For decades, the local Kirana store or the small-town transporter with 11 trucks never bought traditional SaaS. The per-seat pricing and English-only interfaces were never built for them. But highly targeted agents that work in Hindi and Tamil, priced strictly per outcome, change that math completely. For the last 30 years, an outsourced Indian developer largely converted requirements into code. Somebody else, usually in another country, actually owned the business problem. We just did the conversion. Software 3.0 breaks that deal. The conversion step is practically free now. All the leverage and all the power belong exclusively to the person who actually understands where the work hurts in the real world. So don't start a traditional tech startup this week. Look for one real problem sitting 10 feet away from you. Build a solution for it in English this weekend, and when it inevitably breaks, fix it. That is how you begin your own March of the Nines, and that is where the next decade of software is going to be won.